You keep telling yourself you need a fresh start, a new Monday, a new month, a cleaner path, or a more serious version of yourself. You keep believing that the reason nothing fully changes is because you have not begun probably yet. This time you were too tired or too distracted, too unclear, too inconsistent, too emotional, too messy. So the answer in your mind becomes simple. Start again. Reset everything. Clear the board. Build a new plan. Reinvent yourself one more time. And in the moment, that feels good. Pretty good. It feels like honesty. It feels like hope. It feels like movement, moving forward. But sometimes starting over is the exact thing that keeps you stuck. Because starting over can become a very convincing escape. You sit there and think, okay, now I get it. Now I see what went wrong. Now I will do it properly. You clean the room, you write the plan, you organize the notes, and you create the new system. Maybe you feel strong for a moment because this time it feels different, right? This time it feels more conscious. This time feels like the real beginning. But then a few days pass, maybe a week, and the energy drops. The plan becomes less exciting, the life gets messy again, and you miss something. You slip a little. And instead of adjusting, instead of recovering, instead of continuing imperfectly, you abandon the whole thing and start dreaming about another reset. And that circle is more damaging than you think. And then it looks like. Not because restarting is always bad, but because a lot of the times you are not restarting from wisdom, you're restarting from avoidance. You use the idea of a new beginning to escape the uncomfortable middle, where the growth actually happens. And that is the part nobody romanticizes about. The middle, the part where the motivation is no longer carrying you, the part where the system is not new anymore, the part where discipline starts feeling repetitive, where progress becomes less emotional and more ordinary. That is where you usually leave. Not because you truly failed or meant to be a failure, but because it stopped feeling fresh enough to make you feel powerful. And this is why it matters. If you keep restarting every time life gets imperfect, you never compound anything. You never stay with the process long enough for it to shape you. You never build reliability. You become a good at beginning and weak at continuing. And that creates a very frustrating kind of life. From the outside, it can look like you are always trying, always planning, always coming back and always improving. But inside, you know the truth. Nothing is really sticking. You are not building a path. You're repeating chapter one with a different title. And that pattern traps capable people, not lazy ones. Not people without potential. Capable people. The kind who can feel deeply inspired, the kind who can create powerful plans, who can decide at midnight that everything changes now. You know how to begin, you know how to declare, you know how to imagine a better version of yourself. But continuing, once the emotional energy fades, is a different skill. And continuing is where a life is actually built. Starting feels so exciting. Continuing feels plain. Starting gives you your identity. Continuing builds it. Starting gives you the feeling of change. Continuing creates the evidence. Anyone can start when motivation is high. Anyone can make promises after a frustrating week, right? Anyone can feel strong in the first few days of a reset. That phase means much less than you think. The real question is what happens when the excitement fades? What happens when the plan feels ordinary? What happens when progress slows down? What happens when life becomes less cinematic and more repetitive? Can you stay in then? Can you remain connected to the path when it no longer gives you that clean, emotional high of the new beginning? That is where identity gets revealed. You might think you have a discipline problem, but maybe you actually have a continuation problem. You can move when emotions are strong, right? You can act when the pain is fresh. You can promise change when regret is slow. But once life becomes normal again, you drift. Then you wait until discomfort builds up and use that discomfort as fuel for one more dramatic reset and call that progress. But it is not real progress. It is the same chapter one keep repeating. Every time you repeat the same things, it is just a more hopeful form of stagnation. It lets you feel like you are moving without forcing you to become stable. You know the feeling, right? One night you decide everything changes. You make the list, you clean the space, you feel clear again. For a few days, maybe even a week, you move well. You wake up differently. You feel stronger. You think finally, this is it. But then the energy drops. A few things slip. You miss one workout. You waste one morning. You distract one evening. And instead of stabilizing you mentally leave. You start treating the whole structure like it is already broken. Then you tell yourself you will restart soon, probably when the timing feels right again. And that restart becomes so addicting, that this whole process, because it gives you the rush of possibilities without the burden of patience. It lets you feel like a new person without having to become one yet. That is where you might be more attached to fresh starts than you want to admit. Not because you love growth, but because you love the feeling of possibilities. And possibility is lighter than maintenance. Imagination is lighter than discipline. Newness is lighter than staying with the boring middle long enough for change to become real. This is also why I built Riova and the Self-Mastery series the way I do. The mission is not to give you one emotional hit and leave you there. It is to help you come back to yourself again and again until the reminders turn into better days and better standards and more ownership. On this channel here, there are already videos out there about breaking your own promises, lowering your standards, or escaping yourself, needing new days instead of a new life, and realizing that nobody is coming to save you. They are not meant to be consumed as random inspirations. They are meant to work together. So if this message right here hits you, stay with the playlist. Use the next videos as continuation, not as another reset ritual. There's something powerful that happens when you stop worshipping fresh starts and start respecting maintenance. Maintenance sounds really boring, I know. It sounds so small and so unimpressive, but maintenance is where mature people live. They do not wait until everything collapses to become serious again. They clean things before chaos spreads. They adjust before the system falls apart. They return quickly after a mistake. They do not need this emotional trauma to re-engage. And this is the mindset that changes everything, because once you stop treating every imperfection like failure, you stop destroying momentum so easily. One missed workout does not need to become quitting. One rough day does not need to become proof that nothing works. What I want to say to you is one simple slip, when we all have to slips, does not need to become another identity crisis. The people who build strong lives are not people who never wobble. They are people who do not turn every wobble into a collapse. That is the difference. And maybe this is the sentence you need to hear clearly. Sometimes you do not need a restart, you need a recovery. A restart says everything is broken, and a recovery says I slipped and I'm getting back again. A restart often comes with a pressure, with the intensity, with these unrealistic promises, but in recovery comes with maturity. A restart tries to create a new identity overnight, a perfect one, but this recovery simply re-enters the path with more honesties. That difference is huge. One keeps you addicting to new beginnings, and the other one teaches you how to stay. That is how strong people move through life, not perfectly, efficiently. They waste less time in self punishment. They waste less time dramatizing setbacks. They waste less time turning small mistakes into personal biographies. They correct and continue. That skill is incredibly underrated. It may be one of the most important parts of self mastery. Not the ability to never fall off, but the ability to return quickly without making the fall off bigger than it needed to be. You can lose months because you cannot tolerate being imperfect. The moment you miss the ideal version of the plan, you mentally detach from the whole thing. But ideal plans are fragile. Real systems need to survive ordinary life. Stressful weeks or low energy mornings, mood shifts, or travel setbacks, bad sleep, emotional trips. If your structure only works under perfect conditions, then it does not really work. It might look impressive on paper, but only on the good days. And it's not built for your reality. You need systems that survive reality. You need standards that bend without breaking. And you need routines that can be reduced without being abandoned. Always prepare for the worst days of your life. If you can survive the worst days with your routines, with your habits, then you can survive the best days. easy. That is where real growth becomes stable. You stop chasing dramatic identity shifts and start building reliable rhythm. You stop looking for the perfect emotional launch and start caring about whether your structure survives on a random Wednesday when nothing feels special, right? That second mindset leads somewhere real. Reliability is more powerful than emotional bursts. Reliable efforts beats heroic intentions. Reliable habits beat occasional intensity because reliability creates trust. And trust is what you are probably missing underneath all of this. You begin trusting yourself and you see that you return. When setbacks no longer erase you. When one weak day no longer becomes a spiral. When you can recover without needing a crisis first, or when you stop fearing every imperfection because you no longer see imperfection as proof that you failed. That kind of trust changes how you carry yourself. You become so much calmer, less reactive, more grounded, more stable. You stop needing every week to feel magically before you respect yourself. And that confidence is very different from hype. It comes from lived evidence. So if you keep starting over, ask yourself honestly, are you truly beginning again or are escaping the uncomfortable middle where real growth happens? Because the middle is where most people leave. The part where progress is slow, the part where you repeat simple things without constant emotional reward. That is where compounding begins. That is where strength gets built quietly. That is where trust returns. And that is where your life starts changing in ways that may not look exciting from the outside, but matter deeply in reality. This is also where you can sabotage yourself by misreading what you feel. You mistake boredom for failure, you mistake routine for stagnation, or you mistake slow progress for no progress. And then you run back to something new and call it growth. But novelty is not always growth. Sometimes it is just distraction with better branding, with better calling. Sometimes it is your mind looking for a new emotional high because it has not learned to respect repetition yet. Growth often looks repetitive. It looks like doing the same useful things long enough for results to appear. It looked like being patient with nothing exciting seems to be happening. That is where maturity starts replacing fantasy. And the strange thing is, once you accept that, life becomes lighter. You stop needing every mistake to mean something dramatic and you stop treating imperfection as a signal to leave. So, what do you do now? Simple. Stop planning your next grand restart. Instead, repair what already exists. Look at your current life honestly and ask yourself what still works. What works, keep it. What slips slightly? If it slips, tighten it. What matters most? Recommit to it today. Not dramatically, not emotionally, not with a huge speech to yourself. Quietly and clearly. Like someone who is no longer trying to entertain themselves with a fresh starts, but actually trying to build a life they could be proud of. Maybe your morning routine fell apart. Do one clear morning tomorrow. Maybe your training slipped. Train today. Maybe your focus is weak, then protect one strong hour. Maybe your room is a chaos, then restore one space. All those things seem pretty small, I know, but small recoveries create major momentum when repeated. Maybe you do not need motivation. Maybe you simply need some momentum. Or maybe you need more inspiration or the new respect of the path you already started. That is real progress. And once you learn this, life gets lighter. You stop feeling like every mistake resets your value and you stop needing perfect streaks to feel worthy. You become someone who knows how to stay in motion. And that matters more than talent, than more than motivation, more than intensity. Because people who know how to continue become very hard to stop. So remember this, the next time you feel the urge to burn everything down and begin again, you may not need a new start. You may just need to keep going with more honesty. One corrected day, one cleaner decision, one return instead of one restart, or one recovery instead of one collapse, one moment where you refuse to turn imperfection into an excuse to leave. That is how momentum survives. That is how identity strengthens. That is how your self trust comes back. And that is how real change lasts. And if this hits something real in you, do not leave here and mentally reset again like this was just another emotional moment. Stay with it. Stay with the self mastery playlist somewhere here. Watch the episodes about needing new days if you keep waiting for the future change, or watch the one about broken promises if your self trust feels weak. Watch the one about nobody is coming if you know you have been waiting too long for someone to rescue you, right? Use the next video for continuation, not an escape. That is what Riova is here for, not to entertain the version of you that keeps beginning again, but to strengthen the version of you that finally learns how to continue.